Hello, my name is Roger Litten. I'm a psychoanalyst of the Lacanian orientation with a clinical practice in England and in Spain. As a clinical psychoanalyst, I have to confess that I am not very well informed about the problem of climate change. My point of engagement with this question thus comes not from any particular point of expertise, but if anything, from my own ignorance. Given the scale of this crisis, which has become increasingly difficult for us to ignore, even this ignorance starts to become a question, at least a question of subjective responsibility. Can we afford to go on not knowing anything about this question? And what might be at stake for each one of us in our not knowing or choosing not to know? These are questions that in one way or another we are all implicated in, whether we know it or not, and whether we like it or not. The invitation to participate in this series of seminars organized by UNESCO has thus been for me an opportunity to confront my own not wanting to know anything about it and to question my own position on the matter. These seminars have provided the opportunity to listen and to learn from those better informed, more directly engaged in these questions, which are so complex and multidimensional that they will clearly require a multidisciplinary approach. What then is it that psychoanalysis would be able to contribute when faced with these questions that are so urgent for us to address? Do not psychoanalysts spend all their time sitting in darkened rooms, listening to people speaking about their anxiety and their sufferings? What would a psychoanalyst know about what is happening out there in the real world? Well, one thing that clinical experience does teach us about is the symptom. And here we are, as a species, faced with one of the most pressing symptoms of our times, perhaps the most anxiety-provoking crisis that humankind has ever been faced with, one that it becomes ever more urgent to address, almost to the degree that we seem incapable of even grasping it. What kind of symptom would this be, and what kind of treatment might be required? From a psychoanalytic point of view, we are not really in a position to address some of the broader scientific, environmental aspects of the question. But one thing I think that we can safely pose is that this is an entirely man-made problem, an entirely man-made crisis. And if there is a human cause, it is perhaps not entirely beyond our wit to come up with a human solution. I don't think we can afford to be blind to the challenges involved, the alarming state of the matter as it stands today with all the lights on the dashboard flashing red, threatening catastrophic consequences, not just for us, but for every other living species, for the very viability of life on Earth. This, incidentally, is something of an achievement. We inhabit the only planet in the known universe able to sustain life, and we are in the process of destroying it. It turns out that it is within our grasp to destroy by our own efforts, to wipe out within the space of a few decades, the only platform for life in the entire universe. This would indeed constitute a form of collective suicide on unprecedented scale. As you might be aware, suicide is a particularly human capacity, something unknown amongst the other animal species. Although they of course promise to be, they already are, the collateral damage of our own suicidal project, which is in fact also a form of genocide. We are not just promising to take down all other forms of life with us, but also our very own descendants, aiming to leave the place in a condition which is very quickly becoming uninhabitable for any of those who might come after us. This is, of course, a failure of responsibility on a global scale. a failure to look after the health of the planet that has been left in our care, and a failure of our responsibility to pass it on to future generations. Beyond this grotesque spectre of collective suicide, of global genocide, we could perhaps say that what we are witnessing are the consequences of a remarkable failure of the social bond, of the duty of care that we have to ourselves and to others, our fellow human beings, including those we have never met and will never know. If we can indeed consider climate change as a human symptom, it is, if anything, the symptom of some kind of profound disorder, some kind of profound pathology of the social bond, of the links that bind us to each other and help to keep us alive. Perhaps at this point psychoanalysis might indeed have something to say about the various dimensions of the symptom, clinical, ethical and political, even a symptom as aggravated and as widespread as this one. Whatever the treatment required, it will clearly have to involve a treatment of the social bond and a treatment via the social bond. A treatment that will inevitably involve speech and language, speaking to each other and with each other, seeking the cultivation of new modalities of discourse by questioning together the state of some of the current discourses. In the first place, questioning our own position in them and our own responsibility for speaking out on these questions. This, for me, is both the urgency and the stake of this project. I am happy and privileged to be able to be part of it. I hope that, in one way or another, whether by listening, viewing, speaking, or acting, that you will find your own way into it too. Thank you.